My name is John, and I've got Carlos on the line as well. So we're in Arizona, so we're a few hours later than you guys. And just to give you a little bit of a background, I know I've spoken to your organization in the past. I think it was within the year. I've spoken to you at some point. Maybe
earlier in the year, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it was following the last year's MIC, or maybe. We'll be there this year, so if anybody from your organization is going to be at the MIC, we'll be there. So, you know, we have a relationship with NISC, obviously. You can see on my screen now the NISC logo. So we've had a relationship with them for nearly 10 years. You know, our application is designed for, you know, materials management, barcoding, obviously. Have anybody from your organization seen a demo of this at all yet?
Not of, just the one that you shared online on YouTube.
Okay, all right. So this is going to be a little bit more in depth than that. That's kind of a quick little version of that. So hopefully we can get through this fairly quickly. So if you look at my screen, let me get rid of this thing here. So if you look at my screen, I've got two things happening, right? On the left-hand side, I've got an iPad, which is an actual iPad. I'm not simulating an iPad. I'm running my iPad. And then on the right here, I'll move that screen around. I've got my Safari web browser. So this is just you know, if you're using Windows, this would be like IE or Chrome or something. So this is just running on my desktop, and then over here is running on an iPad. We have an integration partnership for materials management, not only with NISC, but we also have one with SCDC. We have one with DAFRON. We have one with ATS and PCS. So we have a few different integration partnerships. However, our NISC partnership is probably the most robust, right? We've got probably 40 or so utilities running this application in this environment that we're going to show you today. So there's, you know, nobody really close to you, unfortunately, because you're literally on an island. So, but we have several that we can point you to that, you know, that are range from 5,000 meters up to 300,000 meters. So it doesn't really matter the size of the organization. You know, we kind of run the gamut of it. So the application has been around for about 19 years. The company is just over 20 years. So a lot of experience. We kind of know what we're doing. My plan today is to kind of walk through the application. I have this screen on the left just so that you can see what the screen looks like. I'm not really going to demonstrate it here, but I'll kind of bounce back and forth between here on the right and here on the left, just so you can kind of see what it looks like in a smaller screen. So MOBILETrak is a web-based application. It's hosted online. It doesn't require any physical servers or databases installed. There is no like portal that we sync with. Everything that we do talks to NISC and iVue real time through a series of web services that they and we have collaborated on. So when we work with things like work orders, purchase orders, item numbers, you know, physical inventory counts, all those kinds of things, we're working with real-time information from iVue. We don't collect it, store it in the handheld, and then, you know, sync it up to the web and do all that. It's real time. So if we were to expense material out or receive something in on a purchase order, as soon as you submit that on the handheld, it's available in iVue, right? So that's an important thing to understand. The other thing is that our application runs on the internet. So as long as your device that you're using, whether it's an iPad, whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone or an Android tablet or a desktop or whatever device you're running this on, as long as you have a connection to the internet, whether it's Wi-Fi or if it's cellular, you have a connection to MOBILETrak and your organization's information. All of that information is dealt with through this little API key that you see at the bottom of the screen. That is the MOBILETrak license. Every customer we have has a unique license, and that is how we pass data back and forth between MOBILETrak and iVue. All that makes sense so far?
Yes.
So what you're looking at here, we have NISC has created an organizational instance for us as ID Solutions. So we have a test organization on a real live server in Missouri that we can run these tests and demonstrations through. In other words, I'm not running a demo off of like fake data. This is a real world instance of iVue. You know, it's real time talking to there. So this is identical to what you would see in the real world. It just means that we're connecting as IDS or ID Solutions, the client. That is our organizational name. If we sign in as another customer using a different license key, automatically this would change, right? So you know, this would show your organization's name. That's how you know that you're connecting to the right, you know, to the right instance. And even if for whatever reason you had the wrong license in there and it happened to be a valid license, we still require credentials to log in. Now these credentials are handled, they're handled using one of two methods. The first method is you set up an iVue user and we use the username and password to connect. And as long as that iVue user has permissions to use these web services, everything's great. If you don't want to do that, then you can set up a single web service user, like a generic barcode user in iVue, and then you can map each individual user in iVue, like each one of you, to that web service user, and then you can log in that way. Data and how we exchange data back and forth is handled one of two ways. We can process transactions on MOBILETrak, and then when you submit them, they go automatically real time into iVue, and then they sit into an unposted transaction queue, and then someone can review them and make sure they're all good and legit, everything's right, and then submit them. Or we can set it in iVue to post those transactions automatically. Most of our customers do that automatically, but we have a few that want to review the transactions before we actually post them. It's totally up to you, and that is a setting that is handled in iVue at the user level. So when I come in here to this and I sign in, we actually have in our instance the password turned off, only because it's much easier for us to do the demo without putting a password in. So I'm going to use Eric's user. You notice here that in this location field, if I click the down the down arrow, it's going to give me a list of all of my active and inactive locations. And this could be a physical warehouse. This could be a virtual warehouse. This could be a truck, you know, a rolling warehouse. It could be a person. Whatever you establish as a location in iVue, when we connect, we will pull up that location list. So all you have to do from here is choose the location that you want to sign into. I'm going to say 1, which is my default, and I'm going to hit login. And then we get this main menu. Now, you notice if I make the screen bigger or if I make it smaller, the application adjusts according to what display I have, right? So, you know, in the world of like, you know, maybe an iPad Pro would look like this. You know, a full screen desktop would look like this. An iPhone might look more like that, right? So depending upon the device that I'm using, and again, we don't really care what device it is, the screen will adjust. Now you notice this left-hand menu over here, right? These are all of our functions across the top here in our main menu. And then you see over here, you've got the same functions available on the left-hand side. If I make the screen smaller, that'll disappear, right? Just to save real estate on the screen size. If I make it bigger, it reappears. If you're using a smaller device like an iPhone and you want to get that menu, you would just click on this little icon, and that's going to pop up or expose that menu. Now, what this menu is for is, and I'll go over this in a minute, but it's what we call our quick navigation menu. It allows you to go from transaction or from module or transaction to another one very, very quickly. And I'll explain that here in a second. So I'm going to refresh the screen here. So just to give you kind of an idea of what our application looks like, these are all of our transactions. Down here, it shows you the location that you're currently signed into, which is Warehouse 1. the current user that I'm signed in with, which is Eric, right? And then it also gives you these little colored notifications here. These have to do with things that we are currently working with that we haven't submitted to iVue. So let's say we're expensing out a work order and we picked 5 or 6 items off of a large work order, but we haven't submitted that to iVue yet. It will show up to everybody that logs in. It will show up as pending, meaning that we haven't submitted it yet. So it just gives you some notification that, hey, you've got some stuff that's pending that you need to complete, and that allows you to go in there and deal with that. And I'll show you what that looks like when you go into it. I'm going to log in with my iPad here just to show you what that looks like. Again, I can choose my locations, right? I'll choose number 1. I'll log in. So here's what it looks like on an iPad. Now, again, that little menu icon, if I click on that, that'll pop up that little quick navigation menu. All right. So work orders is just like it sounds. You guys have staked a work order. There's a pick list associated with it, and MOBILETrak allows you to go into that, pull up that pick list or that work order, validate it, make sure it's an active current work order in iVue. It will then display all the items on the pick list and categorize them based on their disposition, and then allow you to handle those. Receiving is, and I'll go through each one of these, but receiving is you've submitted a purchase order to one of your vendors. They've then shipped that to you, and now you're going to pull up that purchase order and receive those items and validate them as you receive them. Inventory is a submenu of different inventory functions. Like if you want to expense the material out to a GL account or to a work order that wasn't originally staked on a pick list, you can do that here. If you want to return items back to the warehouse, whether it's salvage or construction, you can do that here. Inventory counts is another submenu that allows you to do physical inventory or cycle count. I'll talk about that in a second. And then item inquiry is a simple lookup. Now, transfer, do you guys have more than one location, or is it just one physical warehouse?
We have more than one location.
Okay. So do you guys receive everything in one central location and then disperse it out, or do you receive in all the different locations?
We receive in 3 different locations.
Okay. So transfer is something that you guys might be interested in. You see a lot of activity here because we like to show that, because inside transfer, we have a bunch of different transfer functions. One is a basic transfer where we're saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and just automatically right now transfer this item from the warehouse I'm logged into this one. Transfer request is where I'm at a different warehouse. I'm at warehouse 2 and I'm running low on something. And I go in and I look up all my warehouses and I see that warehouse 1 has what I need. I'm going to create a request and build a pick list for them to get for me and then ship to me. And then on the issue side is where someone's requested something. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to pick it and then I'm going to ship it to them. That's what that is. You see that I've got some pending transactions here, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Requisitions is I'm in the warehouse and I see that I'm low on something. Maybe on my, my warehouse rack location labels that MOBILETrak can print. I'll talk about that too. Maybe we have the min-max in iVue set to print on that label, and we realize that, hey, we're getting low on this. I'm going to go ahead and request from accounting or purchasing that I need some of these. Requisitions will begin that purchase order process in iVue. It doesn't complete the purchase order, but it will begin and start that process. And it has the same validations, on material, warehouse, it's allowed to be ordered for, etc. And I'll go into that. Print barcode label is where I can print labels, whether I'm, if I'm receiving something and it, maybe I want to spit some labels out on that product, or maybe I want to print out some location labels that maybe got damaged. I can print them out here. Maybe I want to print out some labels for my GL accounts that are our common GL accounts that I expense against, and I want to print out some barcode labels for those so I can scan them rather than scan them. All of that functionality is here, and I'll go over that. But I want to start with the settings. So every one of our what we call clients, which would be a device. This could be an iPhone, iPad, rugged handheld, whatever you guys decide that is a good fit for you. Each one of those devices, when they log in, can have their own setup. They can set up how they want their version of MOBILETrak to operate, behave, and ultimately what that experience looks like. Settings is where you set that up. So when you come into MOBILETrak for the first time, you're going to start here, right? You're going to go into settings, and then inside here, we can adjust our license, which more than likely you're never going to change, but if you needed to, let's say that you had multiple, you had multiple organizations within your overall organization. Maybe you had like electric, but you also did consumer products like water heaters and things like that. So you had two different NISC instances. We could create multiple APIs for that so that you could switch back and forth between the two. So that's why that's there. This location field, maybe you're inside, you're logged in as location 1, but you want to go in and check and see what kind of transfer requests have been made for warehouse 2. You can come in here and change your location without actually logging off. And then we have some basic functions for work order. Do you want to, when you're picking off of a pick list, do you want to show the user what the on-hand quantity is? You can turn that on or off simply by hitting the toggle button. Do you want to autofill the state quantity so the user doesn't have to actually input, what they need to pick? You can turn that on or off. Do you want MOBILETrak to actually go through the list one by one after the other, or do you want to actually let them pick on a list? And I'll demonstrate that. So you can set all these different functions. Things like on the receiving, do you want to be able to, do you want to limit the users to only receive items that are for that warehouse? I'll kind of talk about that. You can turn that on or off. Do you want to be able to, if you guys expense material, if you require a division, department, activity code, you can turn each one of those on or off independently. I'm going to turn all of them off for the demo just because it's easier. Do you want to be able to show the on-hand quantity when you're expensing material? We allow you to take notes that you can send up to iVue, things like, I'm expensing this material against this GL account, but it's for Carlos or it's for Don. I can make a note. Do you want to retain those notes for all the items that you're expensing at one time? You can do that. Do you want to be able to search for material? I'll demonstrate that, but do you want to be able to search it as you type? So as you type, 1, 2, 3, it'll start filtering out your entire item master file based on what you're typing. You can turn that on or off. So all these different things. Do you want to force the user to scan or enter the barcode to validate what they're working with is what they're actually in front of? We can turn that on or off. So all these different things we can turn on or off based on what you as a user or you as a global organization want. Does all that make sense?
Yes.
So far? Okay. So once all that's done, you would hit Save Settings, and you're back to the main menu. And every one of these devices, like if I go back to my iPad, I'm going to go ahead and turn on all of these 4 requirements, and I'm going to save it just so you can see what they look like when you have 2 different devices that are set up differently. All right. So the reason that we have this quick navigation menu is, let's say that I'm in inventory, and inside here I'm doing a cycle count, right? So in iVue, you create a capture. From that, I can click on cycle count, and MOBILETrak is going to go out and it's going to find any capture that is created in iVue, real time, that quick, right? So I'm talking real time to iVue. Once I've done that, I can go into that capture. Now, let's say I'm in the middle of that, and a crew comes in and says, "Hey, we're out at this job, and they forgot to stake, this cross arm or whatever. I need this right away, and I've got to get out of what I'm doing and go expense that material." You notice I've got this little back arrow button, right? I can go ahead and hit back, 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 inventory, and charge out. A lot of steps. So what we've got is we've got this quick navigation menu to where if I go into where I was before, now I'm back in this cycle count. instead of hitting all those back buttons, I can come over to the side menu and I can say material charge out and go right to it, right? So now I can go really, really quickly to this function and not have to go back and forth and do all this other junk. I can go right to it. Okay, so let's start out with work orders. So the idea here is I'm in the warehouse and I've got 2 or 3 work orders I've got to go pick for a crew that's either coming in later today or maybe even tomorrow. I'm going to come in here to work orders, and it's going to give me any pending work orders. Pending meaning that somebody has started picking this but did not submit it to iVue for whatever reason. Maybe the reason is they picked this material and they don't want to submit it to iVue because they don't want the GL and accounting functions and inventory adjustments to be made until the crew actually comes in tomorrow and picks them up, right? So that's a good reason why somebody would pause that or not submit it. We're going to go ahead and start on a brand new one. Carlos was able to give me one. I'm going to go ahead and go to work order number 18. So if I was to scan that or if I was to key that in, MOBILETrak goes out to iVue and says, give me work order number 18 and tell me if that's valid. So here you go. So now iVue comes back and says that's a valid work order. It's new subdivision Minto. That's the current description in iVue. I can click on that or tap on it based, depending upon the device that I have. And it's going to give me the information about that work order. Work order number 18. My default expense account is my 10720 account, my description, and then all the items that are in that work order. Now you see that I've got, 5 items. Now this list, MOBILETrak will categorize that list. And the categories that we can put it in are current items, pending, and completed. Current items are items that I haven't touched at all, right? In this case, this is a brand new work order. Nobody started it yet. There's 5 items on it, and I haven't done anything with it yet. So it tells me all the items that are on it. I've got them sorted on my list, in this case by bin location, but if I want to sort them by item number, I can do that. You see, as I change that, my list changes accordingly. It tells me the item number, the description, the bin location that we have it in this case, NE. It tells me the quantity that I've received, that I picked over the quantity that was staked. In this case, 0 over 1. So that means that 1 was staked and I haven't picked any yet. Likewise, I've got on this part, this cross arm, I've picked 0 over the 10 that were staked. Now, MOBILETrak also knows or can discriminate between regular items, like regular inventory items, or maybe serialized items like transformers or meters. These I know are all non-serialized parts, and I'll show you how that looks when we go into it. Pending items are items that I have either picked and not submitted to iVue, or they're items that I've picked partial. So in the case of like this cross arm where there's 10 staked, if I've only picked 5, right, and I've submitted those 5 and made my journal entries and made my inventory adjustments, it's still going to show up as a pending item in MOBILETrak because I've only picked 5. There's still 5 remaining, and I'll show you how that looks in a minute. Completed are items that I've completed all of the staked quantity or even more. Maybe I've expensed out more than was staked, and I've submitted those to iVue. In this case, nothing has been done. It's a brand new work order. Now, I can either go start picking these, or I can add an item. Add item to work order is basically the same thing as, I'll use my iPad here, is the same thing as if I was to go into material charge out, right? I'm going to add an item to a work order or expense an item to a work order that wasn't originally staked. I'm not going to do that yet. I'm just going to go through this pick list. Okay, everyone following along so far?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it makes more sense for me.
Okay. So now you have to envision this. I'm not in front of you, so physically. So you have to imagine a guy holding an iPad, an iPhone, whatever, and he's got this list in front of him, and it's telling him, okay, I'm going to sort this by bin location because that's how my warehouse is laid out. And even if you don't have this set up now, we have a procedure in place to help you along that path. We even help you set that up and label everything. But I'm going to do it by bin location because it makes more sense from a demonstration standpoint. So now I'm going to walk up to bin location NE. I'm going to click on this part, and it's telling me that, okay, this part here, right, this pole, this 50-foot pole, I need to go pick it, right? It's in material group L, which I don't even know what that is. Carlos, what is L in
I
iVue?
actually don't know.
I've never seen L before, so I don't even know what that is. But this would be like, is it a minor material? Is it a exempt item? Is it an inventory item? The material type, what bin location I'm in. It'll tell me if I've turned it on. Remember, we turned that on in the settings. How many I have on hand right now. Now, if we turn this off, this is what we call a blind tick, so that the user, sometimes organizations don't like the users to see that. It's totally up to you. We make it available. It'll tell you what was staked, quantity 1, how many have we previously picked, 0, and what my current quantity that I'm going to expense. Now, if you remember in the settings, I turned on that feature that says default it to the staked quantity. So in this case, the user doesn't have to do anything. All they have to do, we're requiring them to validate or scan the part number, right? So I walk up to the bin, and I'm going to scan the label that's in the bin location, right? MOBILETrak will then validate that. Okay, yes, that's correct. They match. You notice it matches. We know it's because it's green. That input line is green now. So now we know it's valid. And the update item field has now been enabled. So if I want to change the quantity, I can, right? But we're defaulting to the staked quantity. So now I'm going to hit update item. Now I have the next item or auto next feature enabled. So it's taking me to the very next item in the pick list, sorted by bin location. The idea being that I'm going to go to the very next, or MOBILETrak is going to guide them to the next closest bin location for the items that are on the pick list. In this case, NF7, right? So now I'm going to walk up to the next one. I'm going to scan that part. It's going to validate it. Yep, that's correct. The staked quantity is 10, right? So we've defaulted to that. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that, and I'm going to hit update. So really all I'm doing is I'm letting MOBILETrak tell me the bin location. I'm scanning the part to make sure that it's the right part that iVue is asking for. I'm entering in or leaving the quantity that needs to be expensed or picked alone, and I'm hitting update. And I can just go through the pick list until I'm done. Now, let's say that I get interrupted and I got to go do something else. So I walk away, I go back to my main menu. Now you see that I have this work order. I have 2 pending work orders. So let's go back to my iPad, and I'm going to refresh that. Go back to my main menu. You also see now on my iPad, I've got 2 pending work orders. So if I click on work orders, you're going to see work order number 18 down here is now pending, right? So the important part about that is, over here on the left, this is John, and over here on the right is Carlos. So Carlos, on his device, went out and started picking that work order, and now Carlos goes home for the day, or maybe the end of the day has happened, and the crews come in tomorrow. Well, none of this transaction has occurred in iVue until someone comes in and processes that. So now Carlos is off tomorrow. John comes in, opens up work order number 18, and now you can see the 2 items that Carlos picked here, right, and the quantities that he picked, 1 over 1, 10 over 10, right? And you notice that I've got this apply changes button highlighted here. All I have to do now is apply changes. MOBILETrak's going to go out to iVue, and it's going to process this transaction. You see that little notification, successfully submitted work order? What that is telling me that MOBILETrak went out to iVue, it validated all the work that I just did it pass all of the business rules in iVue, and did it post that transaction? If I get a successful message, that means it did, and now I can go in and I can, the inventory adjustments have been made real time, the accounting and all that stuff has been done real time. To demonstrate that, let me show you. I'm going to go into inventory here.
You can see there's a 1 pending transaction now as well, John.
Oh yeah, so like Carlos said, if I go into, I'll go back, well I can show it to you right here. If you see now that notification change from 2 to 1, that's because that pending transaction that we just submitted is now updated and pushed out to iVue. Now, let's take a look at something. Let's show something. Let's go into item inquiry, and let's look up one of our generic parts that we have in iVue. You see I've got this W7 part. I'm going to look at that part number. This is a minor material generic part, but we use it all the time. So there's my part number. In warehouse 1, it's a non-serialized part, right? So it's it doesn't have a serial number to it. It's currently in bin location B100, and I've got 12,780 of them on hand, right? And then some other information. Unit of measure, what my average cost is. Since this is a minor material, it's 0 because it's an expense item. Now, if I want to change the bin location that it's currently in, I can do that. I open up this, and I can change that to whatever I want. I'm going to go ahead and lock that. But let's say that, let's say my quantity wasn't 12,780, and I needed to know who has more of these, because I'm out. If I click on all, it's going to go out and it's going to grab every one of those locations that I showed you when we first logged in, and it's going to tell you what everybody has. So warehouse 1 has 12,000, warehouse 2 has 723, warehouse 4, on and on and on and on. And that's real time as we're working with iVue. If I was to look at iVue right now, it would show me the exact same information because we don't store anything, right? So now we know that we've got 12,780. So let's go over to our material charge out, and let's go back to that work order we were working with. So this is, something that we're charging out or expensing that maybe wasn't on the, W7 is not on my original pick list that we just worked with. So I'm going to put in my work order number 18. You see that everything turned green, meaning that it's a valid work order. Tells me what that work order is. Now I'm going to enter in my expense account. We're going to maintain that 107.20. It's going to validate that. You see how it turned green from red, right? If I take that off, it's blue as an input. As I start typing, it's going to be red. It's going to tell me what format it needs to be in. So if I scan that work order, now it's valid. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in that W7. It's going to validate that part in iVue. It's a valid part. There's that 12,780, right? I'm going to come in and I'm going to expense out, just for sake of making this easy, I'm going to do 780 of them, and I'm going to say, Carlos needed more, whatever, and I can put in my date, 9/4/2019, right? And then I'm going to submit that, okay? And now, as long as everything was valid, it's going to give me that successful message that we talked about, right? Now I'm going to go back to inventory and item inquiry, and I'm going to do a real-time lookup on that part in iVue, W7. I'm going to grab it, and let's take a look and see what the quantity is. So the reason I show that is because this information that you see here is all coming from iVue. So the transaction that we just did, right, where we expensed out 780, is handled in MOBILETrak real-time, dynamically with iVue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Fran, and I'm the accounting manager. Yeah, you see. I noticed when you keyed in Carlos needed more, you keyed in the date.
Yep.
Is that the only time that you are keying in a date for this charge out?
So we capture, on every transaction that we push back to iVue, we're capturing a lot of information, right? That is just a note field that we use. We always capture the date transaction. When we submit that to iVue, you will see that transaction and the date it occurred. You will see the user who performed the transaction, what type of transaction it was, and then the transaction itself.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All I did was just enter in a note so that we could, like, put in some garbage, right? You can put in whatever you want as an example.
It's a free-form field, and different organizations use it differently. Some, it's sort of like some use it to have internal codes, things that aren't necessarily supported by iVue, but that they use internally. So,
Right.
They can keep track of things. That way they can just glance at that note field.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And welcome, Fran.
Thank you. Sorry, I came in a little late.
No worries.
No problem. It's end of month. We get it.
Yes, it's closing. Okay.
Yep, yep. So what I wanted to show you here was, let me move this out of the way. So back to my iPad here, you see this is the work order number 18 that we had originally. And remember there was a pick list and it had 5 items on it, and now you see there's 6, right? We added this 1 to the equation, right? Even though this was never staked on the work order, we expensed material out, that W7 part that we just did over here on the right, we expensed that material out. So MOBILETrak, when we go out and pull the information for this work order, since we're pulling all the information from iVue, it's now added that W7 because we added that material to it, right? The other way to do that, rather than going over here on the right, like we did on the right, where we went into this material charge out, right? We can do that simply by clicking on this add item, right? So if I go to add item, and I do, as an example, this may or may not work, but W8, I'm not sure if this is a valid part for warehouse 1.
W70, no, okay, that works, yeah.
Does this work? Okay, so if I go W8 and I go, let's say I want 5 of those, I'm going to add item, and then I'm going to submit it to iVue. If it's not a good item, it'll tell me, but in this case, it worked, successfully submitted it. And now, in fact, I'll go back to this, I'll go back to my main menu, and I'll look it up on this device, just so we can kind of see it, how it handles different devices. And I scroll down, now you see that I've added W8 and W7. And again, this is all coming from iVue. If you were to go into iVue and look at the iVue screen, you would see all this, right? We are a one-to-one relationship, dynamic relationship with iVue. Everything that we do here in MOBILETrak is occurring real time in iVue. All right. Any questions on how that work order worked?
Nope, none from me.
Okay. So receiving, I'm going to go here next because it's very similar. We tried to make all these transactions operate the same. So receiving looks just like the work orders, right? The only difference is instead of working with a work order, we're working with a purchase order. So Carlos gave me work order number 12791. So we would get to this screen a couple different ways. Let's say that I don't know who you buy your material from, but we work with most major vendors. So let's say that you bought something from Annixter or Wesco, and they shipped it to you, and here comes the pallet, and you pull out the pack slip, and they've given you a pack slip with barcodes. So you can either scan your purchase order number off the pack slip, and that would populate this field. MOBILETrak goes out into iVue and validates it. Yes, it's a good purchase order number. We go into it, and it looks just like the work order, right? So we're working with it the same way. Is this a big PO, Carlos?
Yeah, that's why I warned you.
So it's taking a while to pull it up because it's probably got a whole lot of items on it. So what it's doing is it's going to go out and pull every one of those items. So let's take a look here. So there you go. So it's a pretty big purchase order, right? So we categorize them the same way. This is a PO that it looks like we haven't done much, if anything, with.
No, I think
I'll scroll down here to the next category. No, okay, so this is a brand new purchase order. We organize it the same way. So this means that, for this N7, we have received 0 of the 3 that we ordered, right? If there's a bin location associated with that part, MOBILETrak will tell the user where to put it away, right? If there's not, it'll just be blank. In this case, that's why these are empty. And I can sort this list by item number or bin location, right? It tells me the purchase order number. It tells me the release. So if this is a blanket purchase order and you created releases for them, it'll tell you what that release is, and it'll tell you who your vendor is. In this case, it's border states. And then the description. So it's very similar to work orders. The logistics of how we handle the transaction is the same. It's just instead of taking material out of the warehouse, we're bringing it into the warehouse. And then everything else is exactly the same, right? So now, let's say that using the example that I just gave you, Wesco or Border States delivers this. You have a pack slip. You would then, you would scan the barcode for the PO. you come up to this screen, and now you have a pack slip that has all these items barcoded. You can actually scan the barcode here, and it will filter that list based on that scan. So if I scan N7, right, it's going to filter that list for you. So you don't have to actually go searching for it. You can just scan the barcode, go into the part. Just like in the work orders, it's going to tell me the part number, N7. We're forcing the user to validate that to make sure that that's the right part. So they would scan it, N7. Once it's valid and correct, it turns green. It tells me on PO number 12791, line number 2 on that purchase order, if there's a bin location, in this case there's not. I've ordered 3. I haven't received any yet. And my current quantity that I'm receiving is 3. Because remember, we have that in the settings. I turned that on to default to the order quantity, right? So all I really have to do is scan that barcode. If I want to manipulate that quantity, I can, or I hit update, right? Now I move to the next, the next item on the list. And because this is such an enormous purchase order, it's going to take a second. And I would just go through and do that. Now you notice over here on my iPad, let's go back to my main menu. You notice now I have a pending purchase order notification here. So if I go into my iPad, I click on receiving, you notice that I've got this pending PO 12791. I could go into that purchase order now. And again, it's going to take a minute because I got so many items. And I can submit that to iVue. So it doesn't matter who's doing this. All these devices are working dynamically with each user and dynamically with iVue. Does that all that makes sense?
Yes.
So, let's say that, you bought a bunch of meters from your vendor, and you're receiving them all, and each one of those had you have 3 or 4 people receiving, this huge pallet all at the same time. As they're working, MOBILETrak checks to make sure that you're not duplicating items, duplicating serial numbers. We actually validate at the serial number level. So if, Carlos is scanning all these meters, and he's scanning the part number and the serial number, and, John then walks around and accidentally scans the same one to receive, MOBILETrak will recognize that and say, no, we've already scanned that part. So we're tracking it at the MOBILETrak level as well as at the iVue level. But then the user would simply just go through this list, and maybe if it's a full, if we've received everything, he's going to go down the entire list and receive it. If it's just partial, we're going to go through and pick the partial and submit that. And all that information, just like in the work orders, is going to be submitted to iVue real time, and the inventory adjustments, the accounting, all that stuff is being done, as they're doing it. Carlos, anything you want to add to either of those two?
Nope, you actually did the exact same thing I was going to suggest, which was that using that filtering. So. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on any of these two? I know that Fred's got to get out of here in about 10 minutes, so I'll kind of run through this here. Any questions on those two?
I have a question on the receiving.
Okay.
So we would still need to have to receive the item on the NISC side, or in iVue, or will the transaction through MOBILETrak take care of it?
It will take care of that, and let me demonstrate that. So let's go into this PO number 12791. Now my user that I'm logged into currently, which is Eric, is set in iVue to automatically post the transactions that are performed in MOBILETrak. Okay, so everything that I'm doing on this particular demonstration is real time. If your organization doesn't want that for certain users, you can set that so that their transactions have to be approved. And if that's the case, then all the transactions will go into iVue in the unposted transactions queue, and then someone could approve them. So I have to be careful and qualify my response in that it depends on how you have the user set up in iVue. My user is set up to do it automatically. So let's take this N8.
I was going to say
now N8 has let's see. Let me go into my iPad, and we'll go into inventory, and item inquiry, and let's look up that part N8. N8. Let's take a look and see what we have on N8. So in my warehouse, I have 0 available, okay? So we've ordered 3, and I've got 0 available. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to scan my part. MOBILETrak will only allow us to move forward if what I've scanned is what is required. And I'm going to receive those 3 in, right? So I'm going to say update item. Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold. So I'm going to update that item. And of course, this PO is so large that it's going to take a second here. And then when that's done, I'm going to submit that to NISC or to iVue as soon as this comes up. See how this is now, this little apply changes button is active, and I'm going to hit apply. Successfully submitted that purchase order. So now I'm going to go back to my iPad, and you can see over here before, I'm still on that last screen where it says that I have 0 available, right? And I'm going to refresh that screen. Well, I think I actually have to go back, and let's look up N8. Now,
I don't know if it was received to the same warehouse. I don't know where that PO is going to.
Yeah, let's go to. I may not be logged into the same warehouse. But anyways, to answer your question, as long as in iVue, my user is set up to receive or set up to post transactions automatically, you do not have to go into iVue and submit that. MOBILETrak takes care of all that for you.
Okay, because right now when we receive the stock items, we get a goods receipt note from iVue. Where will we find that in here on MOBILETrak?
So I'm not sure I understand the question. Repeat that one more time.
Like when we do receiving now for stock items or any receiving on purchase orders in iVue, when you do the receiving, you will get a goods receipt note.
You still will.
You will? Okay.
Yep, you still will. Because remember, we're not replacing anything that iVue is doing, right? We're just processing the transaction in a mobile environment. So if that's what happens on the iVue side when you receive them, that will occur just like it normally does. It's just that the user is doing it out in the warehouse where the transaction is occurring. Make sense? Okay.
If you can think about it this way, MOBILETrak simplifies the iVue user interface for those transactions that someone in a warehouse is most likely to be doing day to day. So, charging out to work orders, to GL accounts, receiving material, returning material, counting inventory, seeing where items are, all those things is basically simplifying that interface, but still tying into the same functions that iVue is doing.
Okay.
So we extend.
Yeah, from an iVue perspective, iVue doesn't recognize the difference between a transaction done in MOBILETrak or in an iVue screen. The only way that we identify that is by the user and the transaction type, right? We can determine that yes, that was a barcode transaction, but from an iVue, inventory and accounting standpoint, it doesn't recognize the difference.
Okay.
I'm going to jump into this transaction before I go too deep into this. So I wanted to show you how it works from an efficiency standpoint. So I'm going to show you a charge out and a return. So this is where someone comes in and says, hey, quickly, I need this part and this part. I need this many of them, and get me out the door quickly, right? Because I need to go do that. Or likewise, they're doing the opposite. They're bringing it back in. So one of your warehouse staff would grab a device. They would go. Let's say they need to expense something out. They would go into material charge out, right? They would select how I'm going to do it. Actually, let me do it on this screen because I've turned on all these fields and I don't want to deal with that. I'll go into it on this side. So I'm going to go into charge out. I can either select. I'm going to expense this to a work order or to a GL, right? I'm going to expense this. So what would happen is they would take their device. They would walk up to to the rack where that item is. They would put in, okay, I'm going to expense this to work order number 18. MOBILETrak will automatically validate that. They're going to say, we're going to expense this to my 10720 or 10880 or 593, whatever GL you're going to process to. And that can be scanned, right? And then they would simply just pick the items that they want to pick and expense them. So let's do like, I'm going to walk up to that W7 part. MOBILETrak validates it. It will not let you. We will not let you expense an invalid item. I've got 12,000 available. I'm going to go ahead and say I want 5 of those. I'm going to put in those random notes, whatever, and I'm going to submit that. The minute I hit submit, I've just now depleted that part by 5, right? So if I go into my iPad and I go back to inventory, item inquiry, and I put in my W7, this kind of addresses your question, Fran. And I look at that part, W7, you notice my quantity now is diminished by 5, right? Now, let's say that at the same time, he wants some of those W8 parts. I don't have to go back in and re-key in unless I want to, the work order and the account. I simply walk up to the bin location, I scan that part, MOBILETrak validates it. I've got negative. If I try to expense this out, it's going to give me an error, right? Because I have negative inventory. MOBILETrak says, hey, wait a minute. You don't have any on hand in this warehouse. You can't do that function. So we're constantly monitoring what iVue has and what we allow the users to do. The idea here is that all of these functions we're performing, number one, in the warehouse at the point of activity, right, where they're doing it. And we're working with information that's real time. So this allows you to keep, I mean, the idea is that we're going to keep your inventory as accurate as possible at any given point across your population of warehouses. So if you're doing something in warehouse 2, you know, we're affecting that inventory real time. Does all that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But that's how easy it is to expense something. Now, likewise, it's the same process in returning. The only difference is, number one, we're doing it in reverse, right? We're putting it back into the warehouse. But we have to tell MOBILETrak what kind of return is it. Is this something that we're going to put back into the warehouse to be able to use, or are we going to go ahead and salvage that, right? Once we determine that, then we can just do it exactly the same way. We're going to put this back. We didn't use them all. You know, we originally took out those 5 of that W7. I only used 2, so I'm going to put 3 back. You know, didn't need all, and that's, again, this is all optional. I don't have to put that in there if I don't need to, but didn't need all, submit, and now I've just put those 2 back into inventory, right? So the idea is we're doing this very, very quickly, but more importantly, we're capturing this transaction as we're doing it. I can't tell you how many utilities out of the 85 or so customers we have that their inventory counts are just out of whack because, you know, we're picking material for a job and we set it aside and the crews never came to pick it up. Well, we think we expensed it, but we never did because they never took it. So we actually have the material, but we don't know it. So we're ordering all this excess material that we really don't need, right? So things like that. We're capturing these transactions as we're doing them. So we'll talk a little bit about transfers. Since you have multiple warehouses, you can do a simple item transfer where, you know, I'm going to say item transfer, whoops. I want to transfer part number W7, and I want to submit, I'm going to transfer it from location. It's going to default to the location that I'm in, right, which is warehouse number 1. It's in bin location B100. I've got 11,998, because remember I put those 3 back, right? Remember over here on the left-hand side, I've got 11,995. I put those 3 back. So that's my current on-hand quantity in iVue. And I'm going to send those to warehouse number 2. And I'm going to take 5 of those and I'm going to transfer it. This is a real-time transfer. What that means is I've just, in iVue, I've just now taken those 5 and move them from one location to the other. Now, what happens, what happens if there's a time frame, where that, that transfer is in transit, right? Well, we've taken them from warehouse 1, and now they've got to drive to warehouse 2, and that may take, a day or whatever. We can also do a in transit, right? We can set that as an in transit. But let's say that warehouse 2 needs some product, right? So over here on my right, I'm in warehouse 1. Over here on my left, I'm going to go into my settings, and I'm going to sign in to warehouse 2, right? And then I'm going to save it. Okay, so now in warehouse 2, my notifications are different because it's a different warehouse, and I'm signed into that warehouse, but I need some material from warehouse 1. So over here on the left, I need some material from over here on the right. So I'm going to go into transfer, and I'm going to request material. I'm going to create a new transfer request, and I'm going to say that this is, what is your guys' initial? It's K-E-I-C? What is it?
KIUC.
K-I-U-C, whichever, good enough, right? So I'm going to call it, K-I-U-C, and I want to request this material from warehouse number 1, which is this user here, okay? And now I'm going to create it. So now I've just created this new request, and now I want to go add some material to it, okay? So I tap on this add item, and man, I'm really low on these W7s. So we're going to validate that part. Yes, that's a good part. And I need 10 of those, right? I'm going to add the item to the request, right? I'm going to add another item. Remember, I was negative 158 of those W8s, so I want to get a bunch of those, right? So let's go get W8. And I want, 200 of those, right? Now, W8, Carlos, is that because that's not a valid part for warehouse 2?
Yep. Do W77, I think.
W77, we'll add that one. So the reason it's giving me this red field is because these parts that we're looking at right now are not valid parts for this warehouse 2. So we'll just skip that. So let's go back to my transfer screen. So I've got those W7s I'm requesting. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Submit. Now, I'm going to come over here to my warehouse 1. So that happened. Carlos made that request to John, and I'm going to walk in, and I get notified that there's some requests for me over here in warehouse 1, right? Or issues.
Yep.
So you notice here, KIUC, dated today. That's wrong because we're on a different time zone. But so now I see that warehouse 2 is requesting material from me in warehouse 1, right? And I'm being notified of it, right? It's telling me, that's what that little red 2 means, that, hey, somebody's requesting material from you. So I'm going to go pick it. So it basically created a pick list, right? So now here I am. I'm Carlos, and I'm in warehouse 1. And they've given me a request for warehouse 2. This is the name of it, and this is the part that they're requesting. So I'm going to come into that part. I'm going to walk up to my bin location that has that part, W7. It's going to validate it, make sure it's right? It's going to say that we've got plenty available. They want 10. I haven't picked any yet, so let's give them 10. I'm going to update that. I'm going to hit issue, and now it successfully just submitted that request. So now if I go into my inventory and inquiry, and I look up W7, and I look that part up, right? My quantity has changed, and if I go in here in warehouse 2, we never looked at what my original on-hand quantity was, but I would see that inventory is now in warehouse 2, right? So all that happens dynamically. All that makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. Requisitions, I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to go into that too much. It's basically you come in here, you create a requisition just like you did a transfer. You add items to it, and then that gets submitted to iVue and automatically sends an email to someone that you designate in your organization to receive those emails. Hey, somebody made a request. They can then go into iVue and they can see that request. Pretty basic function, but still an important one. Just the last few things here. Print barcode again. A lot of times you saw me going into, like, if I go into my iPad here and I go to inventory and material charge out, it's asking me for a work order number, and then it asks me for like a division of account, department, and a work order number, or I'm sorry, an account number. We can print a barcode label that you can have on a clipboard or maybe on the wall somewhere for your standard and common GL account, right? Like your 10720, your 10880. We can give you those so that you can print those. And to do that, we can come into this print barcode function and we can select the barcode type that we're doing. Is it an item barcode label? Is it a work order barcode label? So maybe we want to print on demand in the warehouse from an accounting office a barcode label for work orders that you want them to pick today, right? Or a generic barcode. So we would simply just click the type that we want. We would set what size label that you use. Maybe you use a 4x2, a 1x3, you know, or a custom label that you want us to design specifically for you. San Miguel is one of our utilities in Colorado, and they have a custom label, so we could select that. And then we select the printer. If you had more than one printer, we could select the printer, you know, warehouse printer 1, warehouse printer 2. We could select that printer, and then we would just put in the value that we want. So we're doing a generic barcode. We could put in 10720. We could say that this is my, you know, new construction, if I could spell. And when you do that, when you print that, what it's going to look like is going to, here, I'll show you an example of what that looks like here. What that will look like on my website here, we've got an example of what that looks like under latest news, blah, blah, blah. It'll look like, can you guys see that barcode right there, that label?
Yeah.
Right, so there's the item number, the barcode. If you were printing like that work order, it would say 10720. It'd be a barcode for 10720. And then down here in this description field, it would say, you know, new construction, or, you know, whatever account you put in. And then if you wanted to include your, you know, your logo, whatever, we could do that as well. And then this is what it looks like kind of on the rack, right? So the idea here is that we're giving the ability to print either a item label, a work order label, or a generic label. And we can print from anywhere. So, you know, if you, in the accounting office, let's say that, you know, I'm in the accounting office, Carlos is in the warehouse, and I know that engineering just brought over these 3 work orders I need him to go pick today. I could go into work order, right? And I could go and print, you know, work order number 18. It validates that work order, and I could print that. So here I am in accounting, you know, inside the, you know, not in the warehouse, but in accounting. I could run MOBILETrak from a desktop, just like I am now, and I could spit out that label in the warehouse printer, right? So that when Carlos walks in for the day, oh, I got 3 barcodes here, one for work order number 18, work order number 10, work order number whatever. I could peel those off, and then I could go into my work order screen, and then I could scan that work order number, right? So just, and those are not things you have to do. Those are just things that we've made available to you.
I have a question on that.
Hey, before you ask the question, I have to leave. So, John, thanks for showing the demo.
Absolutely. You bet.
Yeah, and I'll leave it to you guys to continue.
Thank you so much, and good luck on your next meeting. And
all right.
If any questions come up, John's got all my information. Just email me or whatever.
Sounds good.
Take care.
All right,
okay,
thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Have a good one.
Bye. Okay, bye.
Okay, go for that question.
So John, right now we have item numbers for everything. Can that be easily uploaded to the barcode to get the set up?
Yeah, so let's talk about how we typically work with our customers. So a customer comes to us, they say we want to proceed with MOBILETrak. Once we go, we work with you as well as NISC to create the license. That usually takes a day. Then we plan either to come on site and help you set up, or we can do it remotely. Most of our customers have us come on site. That visit is set up for two reasons. One, we have training, so somebody goes through and shows everybody how to use it. And then the other person goes through and prints all your labels for you. Like here, I'll show you. This picture you see right here was we performed all that for them. We did it all in one visit, right? So if you have multiple locations, then we do multiple. Like as an example, the guys down in Florida, the Florida Keys, they have 2 locations. We spent 2 days. The first day we did the one location. We drove to the next location the next day and did that. So we can print these barcode labels for you, right, ahead of time. So you could say, hey, these are all of our items, but these are all of our active items. We can then print all those ahead of time for you, and then we can do it while we're there. Does that make sense? And then we apply them. Hey, can you guys hold on 1 second? I'm sorry. Someone just walked in the office. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, it's very easy for us to print items on demand as well.
Sorry, guys. But we actually will help you print the labels, apply them to the racks, whether they're small bins or they're the large rack bins. The other thing that we help you with, if you don't already have bin locations established, we can do that for you. As an example, we have a utility in Colorado that we recently did where they didn't have any bin locations set up. We actually went through their warehouse and created bin locations for them. I mean, arbitrarily, we actually created the actual A100A and all the bin locations. We printed those labels for them, and then using MOBILETrak, right? Like on my if you remember when I went into that item inquiry screen and I typed in that part W7, right? When I look that up, it's going to give me that bin location for every warehouse, but I can also edit that field. When I edit that, if it's blank and I edit it and add and I scan the location that we just created, right here, right? There's no location for it. If I unlock that and I put in a field of, A100, like a type here, A100, and then I save that item. If I were to go into iVue right now and look at that part after I save it, right, it would tell me that it's in bin location A100. So we can do all that for you while we're on site.
I guess my question was, we have item numbers already set up for all of our parts.
Okay.
We have descriptions in them. Is that able to be merged to print these labels?
Yeah,
yes. So I'm sorry, I overcomplicated my response or my answer. When you go into MOBILETrak and you look up this print, if I go into print barcode, let's say that I'm logged into your organization right now, right? And I go item label and I want this size and I'm going to print to this printer. If I go in and I type in W7, MOBILETrak is pulling that item number and description right from iVue real time. You don't have to enter any of that stuff in. We're reading that information from iVue. When I hit print barcode right now, in fact, if I hit this, I have a printer set up in my office, well, actually it's in our lobby, that's connected to this. It's going to print that label. You can't see it, but it just printed. So, and all that information will be available on that label. Sorry, I overcomplicated that.
So John, is there a limitation on nomenclature? Does it take for the item numbers? Can we use hyphens? Or is it all just strictly numeric?
No.
So, Carlos, you can answer that better than I can on the special characters.
So it's not strictly numeric. There's alphanumeric, and we do support all manner of special characters. Sometimes we run into issues, but we can resolve those very quickly. I think we've run into one or two, I want to say, special characters like quotes, when someone in the item description was like 1 inch, you know, that sometimes.
No, the big one, the big one is for like, you know, like, what is it, 12-aught?
Yeah, the slashes were a big one.
The slash, you know, we have had issues with that, but we can deal with it, right? Once we recognize it depends on how you have your part numbers in place in iVue, but we can resolve that. It just, we have to deal with that on a customer by customer basis. Because remember, MOBILETrak, what you see here is what every one of our users has, right? So if you look at, these are all of our licenses, or I'll show you a better example. So these are examples of all of our customers, right? Every one of these users that you see here, Dawson, Holy Cross, every one of these customers, these are all NISC customers. They are using the exact same version of MOBILETrak. It's just how they use their information that we have to kind of work with. But normally we don't have to do anything.
Fingers crossed.
But in the odd case that we do, we can deal with it.
I'll say fingers crossed, we don't have any issues with special characters in item numbers. So you can use whatever you want.
Just for the numbering sequence, we use 4 numbers, a hyphen, 2 numbers, a hyphen, and 2 numbers. That's for the item number.
Yeah, that should not be a problem at all.
Okay.
And
there's no space. There's no space in between the hyphen and the number, though, right?
No.
Okay.
Now, for
Carlos, do we have anybody that does that?
Yeah, there's definitely hyphen ones. I've seen it, and I don't recall what utility. But you can always search and see if it won't be starting with a hyphen, certainly. But
it would be like, I'm thinking of mostly it's in the description field, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so. Yeah, we don't really care, honestly. There you
go. Let's pull that up. So I'm doing a search by part number and description. So here's an example of one, right? That's kind of similar, I guess. There's a hyphen in there, right? So if I was to print that barcode, right? If I copy it and I go to print barcode and I put in that part, it's going to validate it, and I hit print barcode, I could walk over and check it out. But it'll have that exact hyphen. That's in the part number, that hyphen. And you see how there's no problem with that at all.
Yeah, we essentially don't care what you use.
Okay, moving to the description field, there's a limitation on that number of characters?
40 characters.
And that's an iVue
40?
limitation. 40, correct.
Yeah. Oh.
That's not our limitation, because we, again, don't.
Now, let me make a comment to that. Their iVue does have what they call a long description.
Yeah. Yes.
And we have access to that long description. I think we have a couple of utilities that actually use that. Carlos, in this version, we haven't implemented that yet, but that's I don't think we have. But we can accommodate that. So if you have a long description that you want us to utilize, we have that available in our web service, and that would be a very easy thing for us to add. We just don't really have anybody that uses that, but
yeah, to us it makes no difference. Whatever description that iVue supports, we will show. And
that's fine. We may not need the long description, but it's just, I just wanted to know for the description field what the limitation is, and 40 is pretty short, but I guess we can work with that. 40
is just what the default iVue, character count is.
Yeah. The only real consideration that we have related to MOBILETrak is the real estate on the label. So this label here is one of our standard labels. It's a 4x2 label, so 4 inches by 2. You see here that we have a double line description, right? So we've wrapped that description. If we didn't, then this whole description would have wrapped off the side of the label here. So we have an automatic wrap. If you had a description that was, say, 60 characters as an example, we can adjust the size of the font to make that fit. It just may be kind of hard to read, right? So we can accommodate it. It just depends on, you know, what we do. And we're not limited to this label size. And we have several customers that use a 4x6 label, a much larger label. So it's not really, it's just dependent upon what you need is really what it is.
Yeah.
And you can see that we have other information on there, like the bin location. We can put min-max on there. We can put unit of measure, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
We basically can customize things for however you want them to be.
And that 656 number on top is the item number field?
Correct.
That is the item number field. Yep.
Okay, got
And
it.
if you were to scan that barcode, that is the value that you would receive.
Bring that up. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, the idea here is that, you know, we're not replacing anything in iVue. We're simply just, I mean, the term that I'll use is we're just really mobilizing it, right? We're just taking those functions that they're doing in the warehouse and putting them in the hands of the people that are doing them, rather than writing them down on a piece of paper and, you know, dealing with it all later.
And
right,
the
okay.
goals are accuracy, because you don't have to type that number. You know, you can just scan it. So that way you can't accidentally put 6563 6000, you know, you just scan
Right.
it and it'll be the correct number every time. So
Yep.
we aim for accuracy and then speed of getting, you know, whatever transaction you're trying to do. So quick charge outs, quick returns, and accurate.
Okay.
I was going to show you guys something related to the hardware, because we haven't talked about that. You know, we provide the printer, we provide the labels, we provide the scanning devices. So this application runs on any smart device, whether it's an iPhone, iPad, Android, you know, whatever. So a lot of our customers don't want to go out and buy new hardware because it's expensive, right? So they want to utilize what they already have. So there are all different kinds of devices for scanning on your existing equipment. So if you have like iPads as an example, or iPhones, this company here is one of our partners. They have these nice barcode scanners that attach to iPhones, iPads, Androids, and they're fairly inexpensive. So, you know, whatever you guys need, basically we can fit that mold for you. It used to be that we were restricted to using these really super rugged devices that cost, you know, $2,000 a piece, but we moved away from that now. If you still want, you know, if you as an organization wants to use something like a really ruggedized handheld scanner specifically for doing MOBILETrak, we have those. But if you want to save some money and utilize the equipment you already have, we can assist you with that as well.
Okay.
That's always a question, so I always like to answer that.
I have a question. This is Miles. I'm the NISC administrator, and I do a lot of the IT stuff. But as far as the you're saying that this Infinite Peripherals, they do an add-on device for the scanning.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Is it also possible to just have an app loaded on your iPad that can do the scanning, or it has to be this?
No, if you had an iPad, and so let me see if I have it on mine. So on my iPad, if I go to, let me go back.
Are you saying like Miles, if I understand you correctly, using the camera in the device? Is that what
Yeah.
So
where I was going with that, Carlos, is there's a program called there's only a few for iOS. There's several for Android. Only a few for iOS, and one of them is called ScanKey. ScanKey is an app that you can get for free, and it's a keyboard app. You just assign it as a keyboard, and then down here you can toggle between the keyboard type. If it's the only keyboard that you had installed, it'll be the default. But basically, it would give you a little, like down here in the corner, it would give you a little barcode symbol. You would click on that. It would then exit MOBILETrak temporarily, pull up the camera. They would be able to use the camera to decode the barcode. It would then return back to MOBILETrak and populate that field. You can do it.
And we
just don't really like it because it's kind of slow. It's not really fast. But for most of our utilities, you know, you're not on Amazon.com out there filling orders all day long. You know what I mean? So you don't need to be really efficient. We have several customers that use that. So if that's something you want to use, it's out there, and I think if it does cost anything, it's like $1. It's super
I think
cheap.
it's $1 because I bought it the other day.
Yeah, I think it might be $1.
So yeah, the issue with a lot of those is that it's doing the recognition of the barcode in software and then translating that, so it has to, like John said, exit out of the current application, go decode its thing, and then it takes that value and inserts it back into the application. And it's not bad, but it's not as good of an experience as it could be. It for inexpensive or less expensive, depending on where you're going with things. Bluetooth scanners, I would say, are the sweet spot, where they can pair with your phone, whether it's iOS or Android, or even your laptop, and then you can carry them or attach them to your phone or iPad or whatever it is, and use those to scan, and they act like a keyboard. So those are like
they're cheap too.
Yeah. Socket is the one.
The one that he's talking about looks like, I mean, this is an example of one, but specifically, I think it's the, CH800, I think? This one right here, right? So this one actually, this is like $200, and you clip it to the back of with a little clip on the back of your device, and it's literally just a pair. It's not, there's no app for it. It's just super basic. It's really easy. You can see at Walmart, $184. Super cheap. I'm sorry, your name is,
that's a Bluetooth pair device. That's
correct.
What that is.
Yep.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a keyboard emulator. That's all it really is. And obviously, your name is Miles, right?
Yes.
Miles. Okay. Okay. So Miles, since you're the admin on the NISC side, I brought up this screen. This is the information that we gather between you and NISC to make our license, right? So this is the what is this? The eBill proxy URL, the external web service URL that we get from iVue. Then they would create an iVue user or an iVue web service user, and that would be a specific username and a password. And then we point to a specific enterprise. So you could see this one is our test company 4, right? We're talking to a live NISC instance, and it's test company 4. If we were talking live, like all of our other customers, like if I go into like, I'll just pick this. They're running on they're on their live production company, right? So we're talking to live data here. But that's all we need. Once we have all that, we create a license and we're up and running.
Okay, just one quick question there then. So I understand there's all these web services that are needed for the interchange of data, as well as the online access to our ABS data or iVue data. So does it matter that we host our own NISC database server or not?
As long as we have access to that web service, and NISC will help you set that up, and they generally do it through the eBill. That's part of their setup. So when you let them know you want to do that, usually someone from ABS support will get in touch, help you set this up, and then they provide the URI that you see here. So for San Luis Valley, it's through their eBill, and then we just connect to that with that username and password, and that's it. It's really as simple as that.
Okay.
It's very quick.
Yeah, we've got a lot of that set up already, just for our bill print and everything else. So
once the information is there, once the user's set up, it's a matter of minutes for us to do our end and then test that we can connect. Okay. And it's usually 15-minute turnaround once you're set up on your side for us. So.
All right.
Do you guys use the document vault currently for NISC?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. Okay, we're just to let you know, we have some future support coming for those functions, in the near future. So,
like for instance, what would be an example? of what you're looking at?
So one of the requested features is item images. That's probably the first one we're tackling.
Okay.
That's driven by one of our customers. They want to be able to see. John, can you do an item inquiry for like W7 there on the iPad or wherever?
Oh, yeah, I'll do it here.
Yeah. So basically, you would do W7 and then go into that. And here in the detail, you would see a picture of what this is, you know, or multiple pictures that would be stored in Document Vault. And then another good example is transactions. So if you got a purchase order in and you had a pack slip and you wanted to take a picture of that and attach it to the receiving, you'll be able to do that in the near future as well.
Okay.
So really kind of integrating with that document, keeping all that stuff around those transactions, you know, and being able to do it from the mobile device.
The other one, Miles, that's going to be a big one is signature capture. So like, let's say that I'm going into this charge out screen, right? And somebody comes in, they want something, and I go to expense it. We're going to be able to offer as an option a signature capture. So I'm going to hand the iPad or whatever to the person who's taking the material. They sign it, and then we capture that signature along with the transaction, and we push that down into the document vault. So now we have a permanent record of who took it, when, and what did they take.
Okay, that would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's coming out here very shortly, and like this year type of thing. So I think it's sometime in like the early part of November that we're going to have that available.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we keep adding functionality, and you know it's available as soon as it's deployed. You'll see that being available, and if there's any integration, you know, we can work with you to do that, and fairly straightforward.
Yeah, when we do an update, which is we usually do, you know, updates that the user sees, you know, maybe once or twice a quarter, and when that we do a lot of hot fixes in between, but that's kind of transparent to the user. The nice thing is that we don't have to update you at all. You know, as soon as we push out an update, the next time the user logs in, they're going to be getting the update. And most of the things that we offer in our updates are optional, right? We put them in our settings so that, because some things that, you know, customer A wants, customer B doesn't, right? So we make them optional, that they can turn on or off. But whenever we do a release, we always send out to our user community a release notification. So whoever that we list as an email, or that's on the email list from your organization would get an email saying, hey, here's, you know, there's been an update. It's version number, you know, 3.1, and these are the changes we make. And so everybody gets a copy of that. So it's nice. And we had our old legacy version of this was a on-premise installed product, and it was really difficult to manage updates for users because we had to physically go do each one of them, you know, not on site, but we had to physically touch their instance. And so now this is, you know, because it's hosted, we don't have to do that anymore.
Okay.
So I have a question going back to signatures. So right now, until that thing gets released, there is no signature as far as who's taking the material?
Correct.
No.
For right now, yeah, until that feature comes into
the way that we've been dealing with that now is when I charge something out, like here on my screen here, is where I would put, like, you know, Carlos, you know,
the barcode,
right? I would attach that note to it, right? So now I've captured that. In the future, that would be a signature. Now that won't be required unless you turn that on. Carlos, can you show that? I know you have that in a build.
Let me take a look. I might be able to.
If he's got that, he could show it so you can kind of see it.
Give me one moment.
So
any other questions?
The vendors that are using it now, there is no signature then. It's just a note in the note field, and that's it?
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
But they log in with their username, correct?
Yeah, so we're capturing who is expensing it, right? In this case, it's Eric.
But as far as the material who signs it out, there's no record of that.
No, you have to capture that here.
Okay.
Now, when we do that, remember I said there was that in the settings table, there was this thing called retain notes, right? So if I'm expensing material out, right, and I'm doing, you know, this part and this part, this quantity, if that retain notes is turned on, I only have to enter that once, right? I would put the person's name in there, and if I do 10 items, it retains it for each one of those items, because each one of those is a journal entry, right? And it captures it for each one.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this developed out of iVue's capabilities, and iVue didn't at the time, certainly, I don't think it does currently, have you know, the ability to capture signatures aside from paper. And that's where the Vault is moving to. So we're, you know, working with them to kind of move along with that.
Okay.
So while he's looking at that, you guys have any other questions for that?
John, you said that you can also charge out wire, correct?
Oh yeah,
Cable,
yeah. We actually capture wire, cable. We can do reels, all that. I was going to show you guys another set of images while he's looking that up, if I could find them.
When you
give you an idea.
receiving,
Yeah.
for the wire, is that where we assign we have real numbers? Is that where we'll assign the real numbers and all that?
Yes. Carlos, can you better? I mean, Eric's not here. That's an Eric question, but
I'm trying to think. Unfortunately, I don't offhand know of a real item, like an item that is a real, but we have a special interface. So when you would be charging the material out, let's say, and it is a real item, it would actually do an item inquiry, John, and just type real. Yeah, try that. So go to charge out and type SEQ space real. Visually might be a better way to answer that. No, I don't think that one's real.
Yeah, it doesn't really.
Try the David real, because that might be a real as well.
Which one?
It was like David's _ real. There's a specific interface that we use to deal with items. Yeah.
Is that something that we would have to pick up as well, the interface?
No, you'll see here if we can find an item that is actually a real. You don't have to type in the work order, John. You can just type in the item. Oh man, we're failing. I'll look up an actual reel for you so we can maybe send you some screenshots, and it'll let you do like the feet. So you're taking from like 1,000 to 1,500 out of this reel, you know, and it's specific to that. So we
it's not like anything additional. It's part of this.
It's built into here, but since it is a different way of capturing that material, we, you know, show it in a slightly different way, and all that's included. There's another. Who is the customer that uses that, John? Do you recall?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but Eric would know, right?
Yeah, there's one that does that. Okay. I'm still working on this if you guys bear with me. Okay. Let's see if this works.
So the receiving for the wire that comes in on reels is pretty straightforward, and assigning real numbers?
Yes.
or Carlos, was it the guys at San Miguel? It was one of the guys in Colorado. I just don't remember which one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exactly right. And
yes, it is. Really
I could give, like Carlos said, we can give you a better description when Eric's here. It's 6:40, so he's gone.
Okay.
Yeah, we can follow up with you guys.
Can you guys see my little? I plugged my iPhone in and I'm mirroring it. Can you see the pictures I'm showing you?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is a utility, fairly recent. They're in North Carolina, Wake Electric. They're NISC, so you can see they're using iPads with the little infinite peripherals barcode scanner attached to it on the top. So what they're doing is they're just going through and they're picking material right there, and those are our labels, right? So if you look at that picture,
actually, I found that
that's one of our labels for them. What, Carlos?
I found a screenshot of the interface. If you give me 1 second,
Okay.
I will grab that. I was like, wait, I probably emailed someone this. So when Eric and I were developing it, I think let's see here.
And if you want me to stop share, I can.
Okay. Yep. I'll share my. Can you guys see that screen where it has the part number, DB? You see that currently?
I can see it. Can you guys see it?
Hold on.
Yeah,
Yes.
Let me share that more in a better way. Okay. So this is a screenshot of when we were developing this. And so you can see the part number. It is a fiber reel. And then this is how we enter the real number and the quantity. So you can see here.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So very
okay.
easy. So I could just do real number quantity and add that. And it'll show what exists there in the system and then what you're putting in. And so maybe you accidentally type in the wrong reel or something and you're like, no, I don't need that. You can hit that minus to erase that line. So then you can add as many lines as you want, submit the item. So very straightforward.
These real numbers are ones that we assign and not system assigned, right?
Correct. I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yep, you would just enter the real, the quantity, and just keep doing that until you're done, and then update.
And it's all feeding from the quantity that's ordered on the purchase order then, right?
Correct. Yeah, this would be,
Okay.
you can see that this is on purchase order 998. It's on the first line, and 520,000 feet of this were ordered, and then I can receive, so previously received, you see there's 60,433, and I'm receiving 10 right now. But, obviously you can add more. And then the previously received, you can see down there, that's that list where it's like 20,016 feet, another 20,016 feet, another 384, and then another 20,016, and that adds up to that previously received number.
Okay.
So we make it as easy as possible for you. It should be real easy to enter that stuff and receive it.
Okay.
And so, one question, this is Dawn. So once you enter in all this data, you can easily go back to NISC and look at the information like we normally do. Is that
Correct.
how you interface?
Yes. Everything that,
Okay.
once you submit any of the transactions, it's automatically in iVue now.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any kind of like, syncing portal or download or, we don't require a cradle or any of that stuff. It's all done real time. As long as you're connected to the internet, you're connected to iVue.
As if you were working on iVue directly.
Okay.
Correct.
And the nice thing is too, we can set you up, on a test company, so you can run through some of this stuff without affecting your actual inventory and get a feel for what it would be like to operate on, you know, the material.
And we can choose whether we put all inventory items and minor materials or just all inventory, right? We don't need to include everything for now.
Well, this gives you access to everything you have, so it's up to you what you deal with. Again, this is just like an extension of iVue. So everything that's in iVue now you can deal with.
Okay.
You know,
now we do handle like we do handle like expense items or non-inventory items. So if you're picking material, we'll show you all the parts. And if you pick like a part that's, you know, a non-material item, when we push that back to iVue, there is no adjustment because there is no dollar value for that, right? Because it's been expensed out. Yep. But we still make it available to the user to know that he has to pick it. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the way basically we separate out in that transaction. So if you're doing a work order and you have minor material mixed in with your major material, you can use that work order to just, you know, roll through what you need to pick. But then when the transaction's submitted, those minor material items don't actually reflect within.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as we improve our integration too, we will capture some of that material in kind of an audit trail. So you'll be able to look back and see like, oh, in this work order, Carlos charged out this material, and you can see what minor material and what, you know, major material I charge out. So basically everything you do will be able to capture as an audit. That way you can go back and say, oh, we're way off. Someone did something bad. Who did that? When did they do it? And you can go back and track that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anything on the technical side or anything else? Hardware?
No.
Pricing. Don, I sent you the pricing, didn't I?
I think so, long ago. Let me see.
So I'll talk about that because it's changed fairly recently. We used to have an on-premise application where you had to set up a server and you bought the application. This is now a subscription. Since it's hosted on the internet, it's a subscription. So it's a lot less expensive than it used to be, and it's an annual subscription fee. And that's it. So other than, you know, if you bought any hardware like a printer or some labels or things like that, I'll send you the price sheet.
Okay.
But it's quite simple. It's like $39.95 for the annual license, $3,995 for the license. And if you need more than 10 concurrent users, there's an additional fee, but most of our customers don't require that. The printer costs about $500, give or take. So it's not an enormous investment. And that includes, you know, software support and updates and all that stuff.
As far as that barcode printer,
Yep.
Is that installed? So that gets installed on our network and then is identified as an NISC printer. Is it's just the same as any other printer then? As far as the setup.
Kind of. I'll talk about that. The way we currently have it set up is, and we can do it several different ways. This is our standard setup. We connect the printer via USB to a small print server device that we have. And that print server device goes on your network, whether it's Wi-Fi or wired. We support both. Static or DHCP. We support both as well. And then what that network or that print server does is it using its internal serial number, it's an individual serial number, it queries your print queue on our server. So it's a pull only. You don't need to poke holes in your firewall. And it does a connection, a pull connection via HTTPS, so via secure, certificate. So it's the same as our API, basically. the same as the connection that MOBILETrak does, only it says, hey, I am printer 123. Do you have any jobs for me? And then it pulls those jobs and sends them to the printer. And that way you can have those printers anywhere physically located as long as they have network access. It doesn't matter where they are.
Okay.
Wired or wireless.
Yep.
Okay. Now that print server, is that visible to the NISC user when they're logged into iVue also?
No, it's only it's only available, like you'll see it as a option under the print barcode label. It'll show up as a MOBILETrak printer. Now if you do want to use it on the network, so you can connect the printer to the network, then you would also connect our print server to the network, and we would just have to set up that connection specifically. Then our printer, or the printer could be used by any other device on the network, but also have support for the MOBILETrak printing. We have that set up in a couple of utilities. Seco is one of them in Florida. They have a whole pool of network printers, and so they use those in addition to MOBILETrak. They use them with some other things. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, did you say HECO has it?
Seco, yeah. Yep.
Florida.
Oh, I
Not
thought you
our
meant
Hawaii.
Oahu.
It's not Hawaiian Electric, I think.
Okay.
Well, they could if they wanted
wow,
to.
we only gotta go neighbor island.
Yeah, they're NISC, a very large one, right, John? Rather large.
Yeah, they're 250,000 users or so.
Wow.
And they're probably one of our like flagship customers, since they use this a lot.
I just remembered, one of my good buddies is the general manager at the Costco on your island.
Oh wow.
I just remembered that.
And talking about islands, it makes me miss. I was also born on an island. I am from Puerto Rico, so makes me miss island living a little bit.
Island living.
I like to say I'm from the deep south of the United States, as far south as you can go. Well, guys, thank you so much for attending our demo here. If you have any additional questions, we'd be happy to answer them now or later.
I think if I have any more questions, I'll probably just email you guys.
Perfect.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
And as you can see, we're pretty easygoing. So, there's no, you just ask what you want to ask, and we'll do our best to answer, and also, feature-wise to accommodate what you need. That's kind of our goal.
I have a question. How much time do you need if we needed this installed by the end of the year, could you do it?
Absolutely.
So it takes us about, if I had to give a lot of time, about a day to create the license. And then from there, we set up once the license is set up, you're good to go. From there, it would just be a matter of, do you want us on site, which we'd love to come out to Hawaii. If you have us on site, we generally spend about between 2 to 3 days there. That's all it takes. And by the time we leave, you're up and running in a live environment.
Yep, we do the training and label printing if you want it, help you sort out bins, any other, kind of thing like that. We're there to make your life easier, basically, and get you up and running.
So I don't know if John gave you guys our line item count. We have about 374 line items. So that shouldn't take too long to set up, right?
Yeah, that's not many at all. We have the one in Colorado that we did recently. I just noticed because we went through a whole exercise with them. How many did Hendrix have, Carlos? Remember they sent us their file. They had thousands.
Hendrix has a lot. Yeah,
yeah, thousands.
Tens of thousands, I think, even.
Yeah. So that's That's easy for us.
So when you say tens of thousands, that's like just for just transmission and distribution, or with generation?
With just transmission and distribution.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, a lot of those are inactive items, and we have a way to distinguish that. So that's done on a manual standpoint. So anything that like your locations, if you had we have a utility in Kansas, and they've got I don't know, how many does Mid Rivers have? 100 locations, because they had their people as actual locations.
Correct.
But a lot of those were inactive. So we were able to basically deactivate all those locations. We can do the same thing with items. So you would just tell us, hey, these are just our active items. We only want to deal with those. We could filter that for you. We just don't do that for automatically because everybody's different. But we can certainly do that. Same thing with your GL account list, right? If you only had a specific, right now in a generic setup, you could, as long as the user who's using it knows the entire chart of accounts, they could basically expense against any account that's valid. So we have a way to filter that list on just the accounts that you and your organization want. Those are the kinds of things that are we have to work with you, and we have to create that list. I mean, it's easy to do, but we just have to do it. We don't have a lot of customers that have that problem, but there's some. So everybody's different.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the GL accounts, if it's not in when we set it up, when they want to charge something to it, they will not be able to, correct?
Well,
They'll get a vault or something?
The default is that as whatever you enter, you can charge to. So if you
as long as it's valid.
Yeah, correct. As long as it's a valid GL.
That we've put in when it's set up, right?
Well, this is by default. It's any that's valid with iVue. If you want to give us a list to only accept those, then we can do that.
Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna have to do.
Okay.
Okay, and it'll be maybe 30 GL accounts tops, not even that much, I think.
Okay. Yeah, we can.
Okay, so that should be fairly straightforward.
Yeah, we support whatever you need to do. I'm trying to think of any other little things. We do have, there's some additional attributes also that iVue supports that the web services don't allow us to get. And with at least one utility, we've worked with them to do an export, and then we make those attributes available based on that file that they export to us, so they can print.
Is it activity code?
No, it's I'm trying to think. If you give me 1 second, I'll take a look.
Oh, that's okay, as long as it's not activity, because we use activity codes.
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
would need to have that come through.
Yeah, we support activity codes right out of the gate. So
cool.
That's very.
We actually have some. We actually have activity code dependencies, right? So require this if activity code is required. So we have some. We actually work with iVue at a dependency level.
Okay. Right, and not everyone an activity code is tied to a GL, but we do have specific activity codes tied to specific GL.
Yeah, and it'll tell you that if you type in, for example, that 10720 that we do, and you type in an invalid invalid activity code for that, it will not allow you to process the It won't even let you send it.
Okay.
And also, I don't think you saw this, but if you don't type a work order and you do a GL account that requires a work order, which 10720 does, it will say this GL account requires a work order and not let you process.
Okay, good.
So we try to do as much validation as the backend system allows. And again, since NISC was our major integration, we have hit a lot of those validation scenarios. So we have a lot of that stuff in place.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Absolutely. And, if you guys think of other questions or anything else that we can help you guys out with, any problems or kind of business, business problems that you have that you think we might be able to assist with, as far as warehouse side, we will be happy to, talk with you about any of those projects.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good. Thank you.
very
All right,
much.
guys. You bet. Dawn, I'll send you over that price sheet just so you have it, an updated copy of it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, John.
All right. Thanks a
All
lot,
right.
guys. We appreciate your time. Sorry, it took us 2 hours exactly. How about that?
Good job.
Thank you.
Have a
All
great
right,
day.
you bet. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.